I'm going to share with you 3 frameworks that when used together have made me a significant amount of wealth through real estate investing over the years. In addition, these frameworks have allowed me to invest in properties that do something for me that's much more important than just building wealth. Because being wealthy or having a high net worth or being a millionaire can just be a vanity metric in a lot of cases. You know, there's a lot of millionaires on paper, like people who have $1 million in their 401k or in equity in their properties or even in their personal home, and literally they're slaves to the life that made them their money. They have no freedom. So much more important than the wealth that these frameworks have helped me create, which they do help you create wealth, but even more important is that they help me buy some of the highest cash flowing investments possible, which has given me flexibility and a sense of calmness and autonomy in my life, which is the ability to control my time and schedule, because I have assets that create enough monthly cash flow or net income so that I don't have to go to a corporate job anymore. And I don't have to do the things that I'm not passionate about. Because think for a second what it's going to feel like when you're beyond your current circumstances and you have enough income to support your day-to-day life. Most people are so focused on the obstacles or the challenges or the unknown steps that they can't put themselves in that mental space of living a financially independent life. In this video, my goal is to provide you with a few frameworks or tools that will allow you to overcome some of these obstacles or simplify some of the complexity in this and help you see that this actually is very doable. And a lot of times it's doable in a much quicker time frame than most people think is possible. So this framework or concept really started to develop for me back when I was flipping properties starting in 2011. So a lot of people say when they're flipping properties that they want to make, say, $30,000 profit or $50,000 profit. Most people have like a number they're trying to achieve in terms of net profit that they're trying to create from each deal. A $30,000 profit on a $200,000 investment is totally different than making $30,000 on $1 million investment. The ROI is much less on the more expensive properties. Not to mention all the hoops that you have to jump through to get that deal done. You know, you have to raise a lot more capital. There's different expectations from the end buyer. There's just a lot of other things to consider. So I learned very quickly that getting the highest return or net profit relative to the lowest dollar outlay is really the sweet spot where you want to be. And I carried this thought process or this idea with me as I got into rental property investing. And when I got into rental property investing, everyone was talking about this 1% rule. Like you got to buy based on the 1% rule. And this just never made any sense to me. So I took that 1% rule and I tweaked it into the 1% net rule. And that's made all the difference in the world when it comes to building financial freedom. So I'm going to share with you the difference between the 1% rule that everyone knows and the 1% net rule that's actually going to get you to financial freedom much quicker. So we'll start with the 1% rule. So this states that if you buy a house, this is my house, for $300,000, say, that the rent that comes in on a monthly basis should be 1% of the purchase price. And so the thought process is that if you do this, then you'll probably have around, say, $2,500 of expenses between your mortgage, your insurance, your taxes, your vacancy, your maintenance, all that stuff. And so you'll be left with, say, around $500 per month of net cash flow. And the idea around this is that if you focus on these 1%ers, that you'll end up somewhere with a comfortable level of cash flow. But it never made sense to me because I never understood why we would focus on this number. Because this number to me is meaningless, right? Because it's your gross number. You can't do anything with that number. And every property is going to have a different level of expenses, right? There's going to be, depending on when you buy, different interest rates on your financing. There's going to be a different level of taxes and insurance. And so you never know what you're going to be left with down here. But to me, this is the only number that actually matters, is this net number. So the 1% net rule states that if you buy a house, wow, my houses are getting bad. If you buy a house for $300,000, then the gross income should be somewhere around like, say, $7,000. And a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? There's no houses out there. There's no rentals out there that can rent for $7,000. Just bear with me for a second. So that means then that you should have somewhere around $4,000 of expenses. And if that's the case, you're left with $3,000 per month of net income. And this is the amount that I can take to the grocery store and buy groceries with. I can pay my personal bills with. This is what I live off of. This is the only number that matters. And so that's why this is so much more powerful. And I know a lot of people will say, well, you can't find $300,000 properties that kick off $7,000 a month. And that's true if you're buying traditional rentals. But what we're buying, and I have many videos on this channel that walk you through exactly how to find properties today that are around this $300,000 price point that kick off $7,000 per month of cash flow. And that's very, very doable. And these are typically properties that are throughout the Midwest and Southeast in areas, throughout the country that are a little bit more affordable, but you can find a duplex or you can find a 3-unit that when each unit is rented as a short-term rental, it increases the level of income. And then once you subtract out your expenses like your cleaning fee, your mortgage, your taxes, your utility costs, you're going to have more expenses on a short-term rental. You're left with $3,000 net or 1% net of your purchase price. So first, do yourself a favor and commit to doing only 1% net type of deals because they're very doable today in this market. And even if you get anywhere around 1% net, it's going to be a great deal. But if you stack that framework with this next one I'm about to teach you, it starts to become really powerful and life-changing. So this next one is what I call the 4x3 strategy. So I had this friend a few years ago that had saved some money and he wanted to get into real estate investing. And he had heard somewhere along the way from a guru that he needed to focus on doing one big life-changing deal as opposed to doing smaller deals that he felt like were a waste of time, and that weren't going to move the needle. He wanted something that was going to change his life with one deal. And the problem was that as he was looking at these large deals, they were much more complex. They had a much more sophisticated seller like an institution as opposed to mom and pop sellers. The financing was a lot more complex. The stakes were much higher. And he just didn't have experience with smaller deals to really understand how to underwrite a deal like that. So he literally spent years looking for this one big life-changing deal as opposed to doing these smaller deals that might move the needle a little bit more incrementally. I had a mentor tell me one time that if it isn't simple, it simply won't work. And that really resonated with me. And it's obviously a rule of thumb and there's always exceptions to the rule, but I found it to be so true when it comes to real estate investing. So many people want to overcomplicate real estate investing or focus on these really complex deals like a big development deal when they've never done that before, don't have that skill set, and they see the numbers on the spreadsheet and they're drawn in and underestimate how much time it's going to take, how much risk and potential for the numbers not to turn out the way the spreadsheet says by the time everything's said and done. And I've seen that happen over and over again. So this 4x3 strategy really focuses on a simple path to get to financial freedom the most efficient way possible. So this is the 4x3 framework that I recommend to get to financial freedom as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So if you buy 4 properties that each adhere to that 1% net rule that we just talked about, and each produce around $3,000 per month. And I say $3,000 a month because the 1% net rule works really well for somewhere around the $300,000 mark properties. So a lot of the people I work with who I coach through the strategy of buying these small multi-unit short-term rentals, they're buying around that $300,000 price point because you can buy a really great property that's relatively turnkey throughout the Midwest and Southeast that hits that $300,000 or that is around that $300,000 price point. It might be $250, it might be $200, it might be $400 or $450, but you can buy something that's really nice that brings in around $3,000. If you do $1 million property, it's tough to find one that's going to net $10,000 of net cash flow, but it's very doable to do this. And so if you do this, this equates to $12,000 per month of net income. So that's the number that you're sticking in your pocket on a monthly basis. And for most people, getting to $12,000 a month gets them to a place where they could step away from their full-time job. And if you think about that, that just freed up tens of thousands of hours for the rest of your life for most people. Because if you're middle-aged, that's 40 hours a week times 52 weeks in a year times how many ever years you have left in your working years. To get to that place is extremely powerful. So to do 4 properties, 4 deals that each create $3,000 a month, that's not overly complex. These are very doable deals. And for some people, that's 1 property a year. I mean, if you think about it, if you do 1 property a year, it takes you 4 years and you're at financial freedom. For a lot of people, they could do that every 6 months. They could do a deal every 6 months. So now it's 2 years. Or if you did it every quarter, in 1 year, you could be at financial freedom. There's somebody that I work with named Michelle Norman. I did a podcast interview with her on my podcast a while back, and I interviewed her 9 months after we started working together, and she had got to a place of owning 9 total units amongst, I think it was 4 or 5 different properties, and she had created $12,000 of net cash flow in that 9-month period. And she was still working full time, had a couple kids. She explained how she did it on that podcast episode. So the final framework, when layered onto these other 2 frameworks, makes the ROI jump off the page. It's crazy how high it is. And the problem that a lot of people are going to bring up right now is they're going to say, well, that's great for you, Kirby, but I don't have a ton of money sitting around to just go out and buy 4 of these deals. Maybe you don't have any money. And so a lot of people will say, well, if I'm buying 4 of these deals, it's going to cost me $1.2 million to purchase 4 of these deals at $300,000 a piece. And I don't have $1.2 million. I get that. So this final framework is what I call the 100% financing framework. And if you think about it, if you were to buy 4 of these properties that are each at $300,000, you don't have to come up with $300,000 to buy these properties. The bank is going to give you 80% financing. You can look up DSCR loans. I'll put links to some DSCR lenders that I've used in the past in the comments below if you want to check those out. But they'll give you 80% of the purchase price. So that's $240,000, pardon my chicken scratch, that the bank is going to give you. So that means you are left with $60,000 as a down payment. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't have $60,000. I get that, okay? You're also, in addition to your down payment, you're going to need probably about $25,000 to furnish these properties. So you're actually going to need $80,000. So if you think about it, this comes from the bank, this is your down payment, and these are furnishings. So you need $80,000. There are so many individuals out there who would love to get a 12% fixed rate return on $80,000 that they have in their accounts. So this is the actual amount that you need, and it comes from a private money lender. Now, a private money lender isn't a lender that you're going to Google and find online. It's typically just some person that you know or you know through somebody else. So it's a lot of times it's a secondary connection through somebody else, but it's somebody who has a 401k, which a lot of people do. They might have an IRA. They might just have a brokerage account set up where they're investing in mutual funds. And if you think about it, their typical return over a long-term time frame is probably around like 8% if they're investing in index funds or mutual funds. And so if you can give them a fixed 12% return on an asset that they can see, feel, and touch, and it's got a mortgage on it, so they're in a very secured position. They know this isn't going to zero, and this property is creating $3,000 per month of net cash flow after all your expenses, that's a great investment for so many people out there. And you can find these 1% net type of properties that even when you take into account the bank financing and the payment on the private money lender, you're still at a 1% net. So the lender's in a great position, and now you have $0 invested in this property. And so your ROI, or your cash on cash return, is infinite. And so if you borrow $85,000 to get one of these done, the next time it becomes so much easier even to do it again, because in a lot of cases, that same private money lender is going to say, can I put more money in your next deal? Or you can just go to someone else and say, look what I just did. And so all you have to actually borrow is $340,000 from a private money lender, which sounds like a lot, but it's in these $85,000 increments over, say, a year, 2 years, 4 years. And if you do that, you just created financial freedom with $0 out of your own pocket, and you can walk away from your job and free up all this time for the rest of your life. So I'm not trying to oversimplify this or say that it's a get-rich-quick scheme or anything like that, but it's one of the most powerful and efficient paths that I've seen to get to a place of financial freedom that almost anyone could follow. You don't really need any of your own money. These deals are prevalent out there. You can buy turnkey properties at $300,000 that create $3,000 a month of net cash flow, and this is very doable. So I help people walk through this entire process step by step of identifying how to find these types of properties, how to buy them, how to finance them, how to set them up, how to manage them going forward so that you can maximize cash flow while minimizing your time spent on these and actually enjoy financial freedom. So if that's interesting to you, you can set up a call with me at the link that just popped up at the bottom of the screen. It's livingoffrentals.com/call, and that will take you to a short questionnaire. You can fill that out and set up a call with me, and we can talk about your goals and see if the program's a good fit for you.